Hey, this is Mikko from ML Sound Lab, and this is Mikko's Guitar Hacks. Are you ready to have your mind blown? So, I've worked around professional guitar tones for at least a decade now, and now that we're doing the ML Sound Lab thing, I thought, why not share some of the insider details that I may know, maybe you know these already. Anyways, I'm making these videos to try and help you guys out, so please subscribe and like the video if you like the content. Today I'll be talking about pre-EQ for guitar. So obviously the difference between pre-EQ and post-EQ for electric guitar is that pre-EQ will happen before the amplifier while post will be after the amplifier. And this is actually a huge difference because whatever information you're sending to the amplifier and it will distort will completely change the character of the amplifier. So for example, our latest release, Amped Dual, is one of those amplifiers that is notorious for having a huge low end and not really filtering it out, while something like the ML5 definitely does that. So I thought I'll demonstrate this and use Amped Dual with pre-EQ and match it with ML5 just by using pre-EQ filtering. So let's dive into it immediately now. So this is Amped Dual, very much known for having a super loose low end. Let's have a listen to what this track that I have here sounds like with Amped Dual. And no boosts, no nothing. This is just how the amplifier sounds in real life. So as you can tell, the tighter parts in the beginning were super loose with this amplifier, while that chord chugging part was awesome sounding with that huge low end. Now let's have a listen to this same exact riff with the ML5 and using the same exact IR. So definitely the first part of the riff sounds better on the ML5, while I would say those chords that play that riff in a badass trucker way, is there that kind of a way? Anyways, that sounded better with the Dual in my opinion, with that chord really pushing through. Now, how would you use pre-EQ to combat this situation? And ultimately I want to get to a point where the guitar sound actually does both. So all guitar amplifiers essentially have usually some kind of filtering to it. You can think of it as pre-EQ low cut essentially. So I could use Amped Dual with pre-EQ low cut and make it sound pretty much identical to the ML5, and I'll prove it to you. So what we're gonna do is use Amped Dual with this kind of an EQ setting. I'm using the Cubase stock EQ, so it doesn't really matter what you're using. Usually the low cut filters that are essentially the pre-EQ of your guitar amplifier are quite wide and long like this. So I just place this low cut at 300 Hertz, and this is the sound that we get with Amped Dual. And I'll flip back and forth between Amped Dual and the ML5, and let's see if you notice a huge difference anymore. So already they sound quite similar. Obviously they have different characters in the amplifiers themselves, so you can definitely hear that ML5 roar that it has in the distortion, but at the same time you can also hear the Amped Dual doing its crunchy thing way better than the ML5 is doing. So this is just me showing that you can easily get amp dual sounding just as tight as the ML5 if you want to with pre-EQ. But that's not really the cool thing, is it? What I really want is to have a tight, fine-tuned guitar tone that sounds good on both those two riffs. So the tight playing part and the chord playing part. I hope I'm making myself clear here. So what we can actually do is have a listen to just the DI guitar signal that's going into the amplifier. So you can easily see that under that 100 Hertz we have a lot of information going into the amplifier, and this is the reason why the amp dual kind of flubs out. It's distorting that signal, and the amplifier naturally has a very kind of unfiltered low end, I would say. So what would be even better than trying to match this low end with the ML5 is to just have a listen to this guitar track and what we're actually playing. The tuning is in B, I think. So you can actually even see the notes here on the piano roll. So if we just play around with the low cut and have a very steep low cut, so this is very unlike real amplifiers would have. So the B note here would be around that 120 Hertz. So if we just use a low cut that is very steep, filtering out the flubby low end going into that distortion, and just retain all of this information that would be lost in the ML5, for example. So as you probably saw in the EQ that I used before, a natural low cut or filter for a natural amplifier would go all the way up to like 300 Hertz. So there's a lot of cool information between that 100 and 300 Hertz that I would love to preserve, which I cannot do with the ML5. So if we do this instead, we are picking the frequency very, very surgically. Let's have a listen to how this sounds with amped dual now, and compare that to the ML5. So even in that first riff, the amp dual now sounds much ballsier with a lot of girth to it, while the ML5, to be honest, sounds almost lo-fi. How about this riff in the end? So that's what I mean. Like, if we use pre-EQ with an amplifier like amp dual, that actually filters everything through, or it doesn't have any filtering, so it lets everything through. You can actually customize the guitar tone to fit the part. So for example, if I were to use a different tuning, let's say we use A tuning, you would actually move that low cut lower and let those kind of lower notes go through, which once again would not be kind of something you can do with an amp that is naturally tight like the ML5. Usually when you hear about the amplifier, the dual amplifier, people use it with a boost, and you know, a boost pedal like a Tube Screamer or something like this also does kind of a similar thing. It filters the low end. But the thing is, it's completely random. So you find out that people are using different types of boost pedals, and why some people prefer one thing and some people prefer the other. I 100% completely believe that this has to do with what kind of tuning you're using and what kind of riffs you're playing and what kind of tightness you kind of like. So, for example, if you're playing drop D versus you're playing 8-string like F kind of songs, that kind of has a very different purpose for the boost pedal. But if you're using pre-EQ, you can completely surgically customize kind of that filter before the amplifier to make your mix and tone sound so much better. So let's have a listen to this in the mix context. So let's first show you what the MO5 sounds like in the mix, then amped dual with the filter that makes it sound almost exactly the same as the MO5, and then with this new surgical low cut filter thing. So this is MO5. And now this is amped dual with the low filter in front. That is pretty much matched to sound just like the MO5 as far as tightness goes. I would be the first one to say that doesn't sound like a dual amplifier anymore, which is cool as well. But kind of, if you want to have that character in there, I would definitely suggest you use this kind of a filter that we made here, which is more steep and just cutting out the excess information very surgically. So let's have a listen to that. That's very cool. You definitely hear that dual character, but it's still super tight. It's very unique and it's fine-tuned for the guitar tuning that we're using right here. So it's something that it can't be a preset that you use for every tuning and every guitar, and that's why I believe many people prefer different tube screamers or different boost pedals, depending on what kind of guitar tuning and genre you're playing in. You can do different stuff with pre-EQ as well, so you can brighten up your DI signal going into the amplifier. So let's have a listen to what you can do for the DI brightness. This is just a DI guitar. So it almost tricks you into believing that you're picking harder or your strings and guitar is more brighter or something like that. You can definitely do a lot of stuff before this hits the amplifier. Obviously, when you're boosting this much, you're also adding gain. So that's something to be aware of. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like with the amplifier. So that's a very aggressive high-end boost, 9 dB. That's insane how much we're boosting, but it's pre-amplifier, so it doesn't mess with things too much because the distortion will even it out. Just makes it feel like you're playing kind of a brighter guitar or something like that. So in comparison, if this was post EQ, I'm just gonna copy these settings and throw them after the amplifier and turn this EQ off, so you can actually hear what it sounds like. So if this was post EQ, it would sound like this. So you still have that super loose low end that flubs out, and now you have this nasty high end going in. But because it happens before the amplifier, this is what it sounds like. And now let's have a listen to that filtered low end with that brightness boost on that pre-EQ in the mix. And that's pretty much it. This is just a quick way of showing the power of pre-EQ, and you should definitely do it. Once again, one of these things that you can do with amp sims in real life would be quite a bit more difficult with real amplifiers, and obviously this is something that you can fine-tune in post, depending on the sound, depending on the tuning, depending on what kind of tone and tightness you're going with. So once again, there's huge strength in using amp sims in your sessions when you can actually fine-tune the guitar tones to be absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for watching the video. Subscribe, like, and if you like this kind of content, please comment down below what you'd like to see more of, and I'll be sure to deliver. Thank you so much, and go check out Emil Sound Lab. Bye!